Warmest greetings. You've tuned into Crossroads Coven Connections, where faith meets magic. I'm Amber from Manitoba, Canada.
And I'm Sarah Christine from Chicago, USA. We're practicing witches and Reiki masters who view the magical and mundane world with an Abrahamic lens.
Today, we are introducing ourselves and our vision with CCC, starting with Sarah's story. So, Sarah, tell us a bit about your background, where you come from, and why you walked this path.
Yeah, so I grew up in the South, mostly Florida, but a little bit in like Missouri, Tennessee, stuff like that. My dad was a co-pastor at a technically non-denominational church, but we were definitely Baptist. And I've kind of always been, empathetic and have always been able to like feel energies. And my pastor's wife used to say that I have like a gift of discernment. And even to the point that she would have me meet her son's friends before he was allowed to like hang out with them without, supervision.
Love that.
Like to the point that I could literally meet somebody for the first time, say hello to them, and I would like instantly know whether or not they were someone that this kid should be hanging out with, just because I was so sensitive to like energies and frequencies and stuff like that.
And that's so interesting because, we talk about it, and this is something we can go into with the podcast as well, but like we talk about the different spiritual gifts. But one thing that I think is kind of missing from the Christian lens is like they think that the gift of discernment is a very specific gift for specific people, which it is in a way. Like I think some people are really gifted with that early on in their walk, but like gift of discernment is something that everyone can pick up, right? That's a skill. That's not necessarily a talent. So that's so interesting that, that was obviously your strong suit right away, but it's interesting that she didn't bother trying to, pray for that herself. She was just like, no, you do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel that way about a lot of like quote unquote gifts. Because like she used to tell my sister that she had the gift of a giving heart. And I'm like, well, everybody should like, what? So,
that is very interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I feel that way about a lot of, God's gifts to us, because I'm like, well, like, yeah, well, some of us might be more like my sister absolutely is like way more giving than I am. Like, so my sister has, the gift of service. And my pastor's wife was always very like, oh, Jessie can help. Like she'll help. She has a gift of service. And I'm like, why are we putting people in these boxes and also not allowing ourselves to be put in other boxes? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And putting spirit in box, right? Like telling Holy Spirit, no, sorry, you can only give us one of these things. When the Bible itself says to covet all the gifts, to pray that you will keep on that path of enlightenment and growth, right?
Right. So anyway, that was kind of a side tangent, but
yeah.
So I've always been like really sensitive to energies, and even to the point that when I was an adult, I worked at a bank, and two people started like working on the same day, and I like told one of my friends there, I was like, ugh, I don't think I like them very much, and which is judgmental and I shouldn't do, but she was like, oh, you're just being, just give them a chance. And it ended up being both people stopped working with us within a week because it was just like a really bad situation. And I was like, yeah, I could have told you that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that kind of goes into my next point is like, I never really had any, profound obstacles or like any like huge sicknesses or near-death experiences or anything like that. Like I never had a moment where I like met God. But that obviously doesn't mean that I haven't like sensed his presence and been shown that like he work through me and create miracles in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Which I realized it was like late 2014, early 2015, that my prayers were causing like so much change in my life, to the point that like I could literally just pray that, oh, I'm really struggling right now. Help me find a way to, get some more money. And like the next day I would walk outside and there would be $100 bill on the ground.
Love that for you. That's amazing.
So, yeah, so, that's what I mean when I say, like, even though I haven't had like a profound moment where I've like met God or really even heard him speak, he still shows me, ways that like, I hear you, I'm there for you, we can basically work together to get you what you want.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like, I think it's beautiful that you haven't necessarily needed any drama to point you to God. You know what I mean? Like, so many people, and myself included, there's some things where we've been through some seriously crazy things, which, yes, we find God through those ways because God communicates and finds us on our own path. No path looks the same. But it's beautiful to me that you didn't necessarily need that connection that way. Like, you found God in the kind of ordinary situation of life, and you were able to create that. You didn't need this desperation to find God. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think it's beautiful because also the same thing goes with the way you said you don't necessarily like hear God's voice, but you know what? God communicates to us in such different ways, and I feel like everyone has this idea, which is mostly cinematized, but like they have this idea God only communicates through certain ways, when the Bible says no. Like, God communicates to us in so many different forms because we're all so unique and we all receive God differently. So right. I think that's just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And going like off of that, how you mentioned that God speaks to us in different ways. Like, you were kind of there for this. A couple weeks ago, we had our first snow here in Chicago, and it just so happened to be on a day that I was like having a really bad day at work and my personal life. Like, it was just not a good day. Mm-hmm. And I stepped outside, and as soon as I stepped outside, it started snowing, which, obviously is like renewal and, cleansing and like stuff like that. And like, to me, that was like literally God mm-hmm. being like, hey girl, you had a bad day, but like, guess what? Tomorrow's a new one. Yeah. And here's your favorite season. Here's a little bit of snow for you.
Yeah. God knew exactly how to make you feel loved in that moment because God knows how much you love snow, right? Like, that's such a big thing for you.
Yeah. And you were obviously not physically there because, we're across the world, but like immediately I started crying and I like messaged you and I was like, this is so silly. I'm crying about snow, but like it wasn't just about the snow.
Yeah, it wasn't the snow. I know. I remember that. And yeah, it wasn't just the snow. It was the meaning, the principle behind it, and the way God communicated to you through that.
Exactly. So, so with that being said, he has helped me get a lot of what I've asked for. And so I started doing some research on like, okay, why, like, I know people who are such fierce prayers who, is that a word? Prayers?
Prayer warrior?
Prayer warrior, there we go. Who like don't get what they are asking for as easily as I do. And I know that that's like something that people struggle with because it's like, God will say yes, no, or not now. And a lot of my friends get a lot of not right nows. And they get like, they start to question God, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so through one of my friends questioning God, I actually started doing some research and trying to figure out like why are my prayers working and hers aren't? And it turned out that since I was young, like I want to say like, since I could write actually, so like 6 or 7, I had been manifesting. I had been like writing down my prayers. So I wasn't just praying, I was like manifesting the things that I wanted.
Yeah, you were doing the work.
Right. So I found that out through some research, started joining like some Facebook groups, started like purposely practicing in 2016 was when I really started to focus on it. And my focus was on herbology, astrology, and sigils. Um, and then that is kind of a couple years later how I ended up meeting you.
Mm-hmm.
We met in a Christian witch group because you had just started your journey and you were looking for some mentors. And I reached out and kind of began mentoring you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, you know, we've known each other since what, 2020, 2018?
2019, I think, is when, because for me it was, and I'll go into this later, but I started officially using the term Christian witch on August 1st, 2019.
Gotcha.
So it was shortly after that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we met in like October of 2019. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so, you know, we've known each other for 5 years now. And through our relationship, as it's grown, I found that like I wasn't just your mentor, like we mentor each other, right? Like
Yeah.
even now, like you have strengths that I'm like, I can't even imagine ever knowing as much as you know about that. And you know, I have strength in herbology and astrology and stuff that I'm still um helping you
Oh
learn.
yeah,
So
there's some things like I still can't wrap my head around it, and I'm like, Sarah, help me. But
yeah,
that's what's so beautiful about even just community and covenantship, and even though we're such a far distance away, technology has brought us together in a way that we can help each other. We really complete each other in big ways, right?
yeah, and in a way that I don't think either one of us ever expected, right? Like not
No,
only
yeah,
did we meet by fate, like there, you know, I could have not seen that post that you made in that group. I could have not been in the place to want to mentor anybody, but you know, it reached me at the right time that I was like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, leave a comment and have her message me. And yeah, it's turned into something that I was totally not expecting. And like I said, it's turned into um, an equal exchange of energy. Like, you know, you're mentoring me just as much as I'm mentoring you, even 5 years later.
yeah. It's been such an amazing journey, and I'm so glad we're able to work with this too, and even just like we work together at Eden Circle, which I'll talk about in a little bit during my clip, but we were able to work together with that, and now it's kind of formulated our relationship into a new dynamic with Crossroads Coven Connections. And I'm just, yeah, it's been such an incredible journey in 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, that's my story. If you want to go into yours before we kind of talk about our logo and the vision for
Absolutely.
CCC.
So, as you know, I'm here in Canada, and I was born in Newfoundland, Canada, but I actually was born into what's called the United Pentecostal Church. My father was a pastor, and I was in that for about 10 and a half years. My father found that through more study of the Bible, we didn't align with that very dangerous mentality and around legalism and modesty values, things like that. We decided to turn away from that when I was about 10 and a half. I remember the first day I got to wear pants. That was a pretty exciting day. I remember the day I got to put on makeup for the first time, or jewelry, or even just cutting my hair. I remember going to my first haircut, and that was some pretty crazy stuff. Like we weren't as deep as in the United Pentecostal Church as a lot of people were.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we were pretty slack. Like we weren't supposed to be watching movies, or even going to movie theaters, anything like that. We weren't supposed to be celebrating Halloween, of course. Most didn't even celebrate Christmas, didn't even wear wedding rings, that kind of stuff. We were kind of rebellious, I would say. We kind of did our own thing, which, because my father is an avid studier of the Bible and scholar of the Bible, and he just found, the more and more he cracked that thing open, the more he realized, hey, a lot of this is not what I was taught. And we left that when I was about 10 and a half, and we moved to Manitoba, where we kind of embarked on this. It was sort of non-denominational, but still that apostolic oneness sort of doctrine. Pentecostalism for sure, right? But when I say oneness, it's a different view on, like, we don't use the term Trinity, that sort of thing. And I stayed in that kind of mindset up until really I became a Christian witch. And we moved from Manitoba when I was 11 or so. I turned 12 in California. I turned 13 in Texas. And then I turned, I did turn 14 there as well. We didn't quite move as fast as we wanted to from Texas, but I turned 15 back in Canada. So I had commitment issues. Needless to say. Temporary home was that song by Carrie Underwood was the bane of my existence. Moved around a lot. Up to this day, I've moved 22 times. Not for, some of them might have been my choice, but most of them, that's just how it went. We meant to stay in California forever. Didn't work out. We meant to stay in Texas forever. The 2009 recession hit in America. We couldn't stay, right? Right. So many different things moved me around, but you know what? I learned so much from those different places and different cultures. I was embraced into all these different cultures, which is why I have such a strange accent. I don't think I have a specific accent from where I live. I think it depends on who I'm talking to and what I'm doing. I have this different autistic accent. But when I finally moved back to the prairies around 2010, I stayed there for a number of years, and I got married in 2018 to another ex-United Pentecostal boy. And in 2019, I really started embarking towards, because I started going to university, studying theology and music. And, once again, same thing kind of with my dad. The more I cracked open that Bible, the more I'm like, hey, wait a minute. That's not what that scripture says. That, when you start reading and using your concordance and translating the original Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek, you're like, oh, that's not what that scripture said at all. So I found out something titled, a Christian witch, and a friend of mine had just recently converted, if you will, and she sent me an article, actually by Christian Witch in the Craft, another famous group with us, and I read the article and I was like, oh my gosh, it's possible. And suddenly all these things through my childhood started lining up. And one thing, when I was in California, I started having prophetic dreams. I started having even dreams of the dead. I started being able to communicate with the dead in that way. And I wasn't really, being Pentecostal, we were pretty excited with spiritual gifts. We were, we were good with prophecy, speaking in tongues, all those things. I started speaking in tongues when I was 12. And we started, getting excited when my spiritual gifts were coming out. But then when I started the mediumship side of things, it was very scary for my family. They didn't want me touching that. They didn't want me talking about it. It was very hush-hush. And I always felt like I was different. I always felt like I was a bit of the black sheep, and I didn't want to suppress that side of myself, but I did. And I tried to play the Christian game for years. I was baptized 3 times, actually, because apparently the first time wasn't the right time. And I just found, playing by someone else's rules wasn't for me. So when I stumbled upon Christian witchcraft and I started doing more study of the Bible myself, I'm like, hey, this is definitely aligning more with what I feel and what I felt my whole life. When I also, a little bit before I entered Christian witchcraft, I did have my own miraculous healing where, being a Pentecostal, I experienced a lot of miracles. I experienced a lot of times with God in deep, moving ways. And there were a lot of times in my life where I thought I was going to die, right? I got chased by a bear. I nearly fell off a cliff. I nearly drowned when I was a kid. All sorts of things. But when I was 18, I experienced endometriosis symptoms. And I was under a lot of trauma at the time, a lot of stress. And I was in pain all the time. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I had to move back home. I was with a terrible guy and ended up breaking that off. Lost all my friends. And it was a very dark period of time for me, and I would wake up and I'd feel like a truck ran me over every morning. And I'd have cystic ruptures, I'd have all sorts of things. But because I was so young, they didn't want to operate. They didn't want to try to remove any tissue because they were fearful it would affect any chance of fertility I had, which was incredibly slim at that point. But I persevered, and I really dove into my relationship with Christ at that time. And that was 2014 to 2015. So I also started having stress-induced seizuring. I had all sorts of things. So it pushed me further into my relationship with God. There was a time I was quite angry with God, because I was like, what the heck? I lived my life the way I've always lived for God. I knew God as soon as I was born, right? Like I felt like I knew Jesus before I could say his name. And I was very angry, but then I realized through talking with other survivors of cancer and survivors that had lost loved ones to cancer, the ones that were left behind. And, I realized that was a very selfish mindset, because why not me? The world is a crazy place. And sometimes, pardon my French, but shit happens, Sometimes it just goes bad. And I was under a lot of stress at that time, and the body does not handle stress. As you know, we're both Reiki masters, and as you know, like, stress is a killer. It does some crazy things, and when you hold that stress inside of you, it comes out in all sorts of crazy ways. So I really started working on that, my mindset, and realizing, you know what, like, I am seated on the throne in heavenly places with Christ. Therefore, it doesn't matter what happens to my body. There is nothing that can happen to my body that will stop me from going there or from being there right now.
Right.
And I really delved into that story and that belief system. And sure enough, April 4th, 2015, I was in a worship service, and I felt God say, like, are you ready to receive the healing I have for you? And I said yes, and I broke out in tongues, or light language, another topic for another day. And never had pain since. I did write a book about that, by the way. Shameless plug. It's on Amazon. If you're interested in more on that story. But anyways, so I've always had a very strong relationship with God, always. So I was very excited when I found Christian Witchcraft, and that's of course when I found Sarah. And then I had communed with a few others, and we had this idea of a church, a church specifically for the Christian witch community, which we named Eden Circle. And I had always wanted to be the person that helped set it up. Like, I didn't always want to be the face of Eden Circle. That was something that was just kind of asked of me by other founders at the time. Because for me, I have the gifts of an apostle. So I am the organizer. I'm the one that sets it up. I'm the one that paves the road so others can run, right? Makes the way so that others can do their work. And I fulfilled the role as pastor during that time. But I didn't really feel like it was always meant for me. And like, people even ask, like, well, what about a physical church? Like, how about we set something up physically? And I'm like, well, I feel like I'm supposed to bring forward the resources to encourage others to do that. Like, I don't feel that calling on myself. Right.
Right.
And so, with Eden Circle, we ran that from 2022 until recently. And, there was quite a bit of, and Sarah's fully aware of this, there was quite a bit of upheaval. There were changes. There were founders that decided, you know what, this isn't for me. There were founders that completely changed religions. And it definitely never truly was the vision that it was, because it wasn't backed up properly. It wasn't, they had the dream, but a lot of people didn't have the drive. So
there were a lot of really big ideas that were brought to the table, but nobody was willing to make them a reality. And a lot of the ideas were really good ideas, but you couldn't do it on your own.
Exactly. And I was so thankful when you joined me as an administrator and helped me kind of finish it off, right? And get it cleaned up to where we felt like it was time to release. But it was a difficult journey for sure. Learned a lot. And That's not to say I will never do it again, but if I did, it would definitely be something completely different.
Right.
That being said, I feel like it really more so led us to where we are now with Crossroads Coven Connections, and I feel more that aligns with my calling than anything else. Because of course, as you know, like I'm a mother, and someday Sarah hopes to be a mother, and it's very hard for us to lead something like that all by ourselves, especially as volunteers when we have families to take care of. And
And I
it's
have a full-time job, and yeah, it was like I, would wake up, do a little bit of work for Eden Circle. I didn't have much time in the morning, and then, go to work, come home, eat, get ready for bed, and then like try to do work before officially going to bed. And it was like I just had no time. And
no. It was honestly an unhealthy balance. It wasn't wrong intentions or anything like that, but it was just unhealthy.
Yeah.
And it was the same for me. Like we actually tried like even implementing business hours, because it's like, and it's not anything, I don't think it was anything conscious, but there's this mindset almost that comes around Christianity, Christian churches in general, that, you have to be giving your all the time. And that's not actually possible. And it's not actually biblical. And I even felt like it was taking away a lot from my personal time with my family. Like I felt like I was always on the phone. I was always answering questions. I was always like, even late into the night, people would want me to minister to them. And with a real minister, like, not that I'm not, but a minister that's professionally paid, that's what they get paid for. That's what puts their bread and butter on the table. But with Eden Circle, it wasn't, I wasn't getting money, and I wasn't asking for money either, It was strictly volunteer work. I was tithing with my time, right? Which I don't regret, but I think that it wasn't something that I could commit to long term. And it's as simple as that, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, I guess moving forward from that, yeah, it did teach me a lot. I met a lot of really great people. I really connected with Sarah through that. And I really found out what where our true gifts lied, and where we really wanted to move forward, and how. I also discovered, I went through some crazy stuff this year, but I found Reiki thanks to Sarah. Sarah introduced me to Reiki. And that was something, as a Pentecostal, I really understood, but I just didn't know it was called Reiki. I've been doing it my whole life. I've been working on it. People would actually ask me to pray for others because I had such a strong understanding of healing. And I would literally just do visualization and Reiki on people, and I just didn't know. I just immediately, instinctively did that. So then when I found Reiki, it just really brought a lot of things together for me, and it really helped me understand healing in general. So that really made a huge impact on me, much bigger than I expected, because I just was taking it just for fun. I never even expected it to go as big as it did, but I eventually opened my own practice here in Portage la Prairie, and because of our growth in Reiki together, and because of our growth in Eden Circle, and just in Christian Witchcraft as a whole together, we decided to come together for Crossroads Coven Connections. And we always talked about doing a podcast. We always wanted to, and we finally were like, hey, well, you know what? If the church is coming to a halt, then this is something we can do and commit to, with also still providing what we need for our families, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's been an incredible journey. I'm sorry, I was talking a lot, but
Oh, no.
it's been an incredible journey so far, and I know it's only just gonna keep growing and going. But let's talk a little bit now about the actual Patreon and the actual logo, because I think it's such a cool story, and I think I really think our members will appreciate, or our listeners will really appreciate hearing the story. So how about you go first, Sarah?
Yeah, so I came across this picture a few months ago. I want to say it was like in August or something. That is just a like very bright photo of like two pink koi fish swimming in like a beautiful crystal blue, I'm assuming pond. And I have been like absolutely obsessed with this picture for months. It's been like, I typically change my wallpaper like once a week on my phone. This has been my wallpaper since I found it back in August. So just like really obsessed with this image. And when we started talking about, this podcast, and we came up with a name for it and stuff, we were trying to decide like, okay, what do we want the logo to be? Or like basically like what colors, like let's start with colors. What do we want the colors to be? And I sent Amber this photo, and I was like, dude, like right now I am so obsessed with these colors. What can we do with this? And turned out it spoke a little bit more than just the color.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I had always liked the idea of using Crossroads in a business model, or just even like a title for something, because I'm in Canada. A lot of my friends, including yourself, and my clientele are in the US. So kind of that idea of, meeting at the crossroads, like meeting through technology. There's a magic that sort of, occurs, of course, as we know, in magical traditions at the crossroads. I was excited to use that title. And when Sarah brought forward the koi fish, it really clicked for me, because I had been doing tarot readings and divination for myself on like, okay, where am I going next? Because I knew it was just a matter of time for Eden Circle. I knew I had nothing left that I could, like I was burnt out, very, very much burnt out. And I knew that there was something else waiting for me. So when I was doing these business divinations for myself, I actually asked like an animal guide to step forward using one of my animal guide decks, and I pulled the koi fish. Just before she had sent me, like probably the night before she had sent me that picture for the color scheme. And as we know, like the koi fish is a guide of resilience, determination, abundant mindset. It's also an animal to call upon when you want to remove the idea of scarcity, because it is so focused on abundance that like, and it's always pushing forward. Like it's a muddy water, a muddy water fish has no concern on where it's getting its food or where it's going to be next. It just it thrives. Actually, it does more than just survive. It thrives with its beauty and with its tenacity. So I felt like, that was a message for me to really not be concerned about how it's going to work, where it's going to work, where the money's coming from, all of that, abundance will flow to me as I keep swimming, right? So when Sarah brought forward the koi picture, I got super excited. And I loved the color scheme, of course. And I love the duality of like the blues and the pinks, combining those kind of teal colors together. And I presented the idea of actually, implementing the koi fish. The koi fish, it's very similar to that yin and yang idea. And it really makes me feel like, we complete each other, as we've discussed, in so many ways. So we are kind of swimming together in this crazy stream of life, right?
Absolutely.
And helping each other with our strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, it was a beautiful way that it worked out, obviously through God. And when it came to the tier ideas, I just thought it would be neat to implement some angel numbers, because angel numbers are something that have been really, like, I mean, I've seen angel numbers a lot throughout the years, but this year especially, I feel like with the moving age of Aquarius, it's really come out to me in synchronicities of angel numbers. And I feel like Sarah and I, like, we're always messaging each other with angel numbers. We're like throughout the day, we're like, okay, like actually it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 111 or anything like that.
Interrupting conversations to be like 3, 3, 3.
Always like squirrel 5, 5, 5.
Literally.
All the time. And so when we chose those angel numbers to work into the tiers, we also decided to name the tiers based on the principles of those angel numbers, right? So we came up with the Seeker, because the 111 or 1111, it's the big focus on new beginnings, new strategies, very much like the Fool energy, taking that leap and taking that step of faith. So the Seeker. Then there's the Weaver, right? The Spider. We're weaving our own fates with 333, completion and creation. 555, the Shifter. And that's the Chameleon. We shift, we grow, we evolve as we go. And then 777, the Oracle, the Black Cat, right? Seeing and knowing and receiving and divine intuition from spirit. So it's been quite a journey of creation, but been a lot of fun as well. It's definitely been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I feel like this is kind of going back a little bit, but you know, we said, oh, we've always talked about doing a podcast, and like it just never really worked out, and um, you know, focusing on Eden Circle kind of was the reason for that. And going back to like what you said, where like you heard God ask, like, are you ready to receive this healing?
Mm-hmm.
That like goes for everything, like not just your healing, but like that goes for like manifestations. Like you will not receive until you're ready for it, right?
Big
Like
time.
you might,
Big time.
yeah, like you might think you're ready for $1 million in your bank account, but you're not. You are not. And God knows that and will not provide that until you're ready for it. And I really think that that comes into play with Crossroads Coven.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And your
'Cause
story as well. Like, you know, when you were talking about how you were receiving these answers to prayer and you were receiving these manifestations, it's because you were ready, right? It's because you readied yourself. And I think that's what Eden Circle, I think that's what all of our paths, even the, you know, the Christian denominations we were in before, really brought us to this point of we're ready. You know, we are ready to receive, and we have been receiving in big ways.
yeah. And those, not to be cheesy, but those journeys that we had separately truly brought us to the crossroads where not only have we met, but where our spirituality meets, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times, like most other communities, I would say, are welcome, right? But I feel like with us, like we have to stay within the Christian witch community, because it's like in just the Christian community, witches are not widely accepted, and then in the witch community, a lot of times Christians aren't.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's one thing that I love about Crossroads, is that like our logo says, it's, you know, where faith meets magic, but it's also where not only yours and my paths cross, but it's where everybody who's listening, you know, this is where we come to meet.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're meeting at the crossroads, and we're finding that path together. We're forging that path with Spirit together. And that's why even the Patreon, it's going to be so beautiful to see that grow and to develop, because that's a coven. That's a real coven. That's a family. That's a place where you can be you, and you're not going to be judged about it. And even if you're not necessarily a Christian witch, maybe you don't even like that term. Maybe you prefer Jesus witch, mystic, Gnostic. I've been using Abrahamic, or even just paganism. You know, there's so much that we can all learn from each other. And I think that's the beautiful thing about witchcraft in general, is it really encourages us to learn from one another and to learn from other cultures, learn from other ideas. And that's something I never liked about Christianity, because Christianity almost has this habit of shutting you away, especially like the more cultic mindsets. It shuts you away from everyone else. Like, no. Those aren't our people. Stay over here, right? But we have so much to learn and to see from other cultures and other understandings, and we are missing it. We're severely cutting ourselves off from what we can access from God by cutting ourselves off from the rest of his creation. So from their creation. So I'm really, I've always loved witchcraft for that, because it encourages you to get out there, to look, to see. So long as things aren't closed, you know, you can go to that crossroads and meet other people and see their perspectives, understand where they come from, and learn how we can all work together and operate as a real Church of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's a great place to end it, but it doesn't feel like an ending to me. It feels like a beginning. It's the ending to this specific episode. But
like, this episode has brought up so many like amazing points that we're going to touch on, you know, in the coming weeks. So I'm excited.
Yes, me too. We have so many great topics that we're going to discuss. And of course, if you have any topics that you wish to discuss, feel free to let us know. We also have a chat that is open to all members, including free members, on the Patreon. You're always welcome to message there and let us know how you're doing, how you enjoy the podcast, what you'd like to hear next. But this is such an incredible adventure, and I'm just so thankful that I can do it with you, Sarah, and I can do it with all of you listeners out there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for meeting us at the Crossroads.
We'll see you again next time. Love you lots. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Bye-bye.